Okay.
Sounds good. We're at 9, so I'm going to start the live stream here. Welcome social media, YouTube and
Okay.
Facebook. Welcome to the Veterans Breakfast Club. We're going to get the program started by playing and everybody in the room. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Veterans Breakfast Club, Greatest Generation Live for Wednesday, July 2nd. Happy to see you all bright and early this morning. A little different than our normal 7 p.m. Thursday time. But my name is Sean Hall. I'm a director of programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. We're a nonprofit in Western Pennsylvania, and our mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. We've been doing this for 17 years. We invite you to visit our website, www.veteransbreakfastclub.org, to check out everything there is to know about us. You can see all of our past events, see our upcoming schedule for both in-person and online events. You can read our free quarterly magazine, which I can get into a little bit later. But also, we're just saying happy Wednesday. It's great to see you all this morning. I have my coffee and I'm ready to get into some veteran stories with our usual host, Glenn Flickinger. Glenn, cheers. How are you?
Yeah, cheers. I've got my cup of coffee here. You can tell it's 9 a.m. because I got my cup of coffee, the second one. And I don't have my contacts in. So they don't go in till like 10:30, 11 o'clock. They don't wake up till then. So you got Glenn with glasses. And there's Brad. See, Brad, I promised Brad I'd buy him a cup of coffee this morning for him to be on the show. And there he goes. See that? Okay, Brad. Yeah, Glenn Flickinger. I'm the host of Greatest Generation Live. I get to have all the fun in that I host this show on a weekly basis, normally on Thursday evenings. This is unusual for Wednesday morning, but it's due to a couple of our guests being in England, which we're really pleased to have them. So it's Greatest Generation Live, all things World War II, authors, veterans, which we have one today, an English veteran, which we're really very, very pleased to have on. We'll be introducing him in a minute or two. We've been focusing on D-Day and the invasion of Normandy for the past month. I've been doing this for 5 years now with the VBC Online, and we've done many, many programs on D-Day and the Battle for Normandy, almost all of them from the American point of view, given that we're sitting here in America. The reality is more than half, 65, 70% of the men who landed on D-Day were either British or Canadians, and a few Frenchmen thrown in there as well. And we've not really told that story before. So we're going to start changing that today with this discussion about Gold Beach and an English veteran. And we're going to continue that later this month, July 24th. I have that date right, with Scott Masters as well, on the story of Juno Beach, the Canadian beach. So without much further ado, we're going to jump right into this. So with us today well, first let me Scott Masters. Let me make sure. Scott, are you unmuted?
I am.
Great, thank you, Scott, so very much. I think all of you know Scott from Toronto. Scott, for those who don't know you, give us a little background.
Yeah, I'm a history teacher up here. It's great to see everybody this morning. I actually have a couple of students in the room this morning who must be getting a late start on their summer vacation. We just started last week. But I teach at a school called Crestwood Preparatory College, and for about the last 20 years, I've been doing an oral history project, having my students meet all kinds of interesting people in the community, with a focus on people from the World War II time period.
And Scott understates exactly what he has up there, because for 20 plus years he and his students have been interviewing World War II vets from around the world, and has an incredible library of those interviews, and has educated this younger generation in an in-depth way about the sacrifices made in World War II for us to live the kind of life we lead today. Also with us this morning is another Brit if I could say that, Tim. Tim Saunders. Tim, I think you're unmuted. Please say hello to everybody. Wave your hand.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Hello.
We're very pleased to have Tim on. Tim is a veteran of the British military, and an author, an historian, and introduced to us by Scott. Tim, tell us about yourself. Give us a little background.
Well, I was in the British military. I was an infantry officer in the Devonshire and Dorset Regiment, county regiment for 30 years, during which time did quite a few tours in various parts of the world. And then when I left just before the age of 50, I then spent the next 12 years or so as a member of the British Reserve Army. So yeah, and when I wasn't soldiering, I was doing military history, as Glenn said, writing books, and actually for 10 years we made military history documentaries, most of which are now on Amazon, but sadly, because we can't afford to closed caption them, they're not available in North America. One of the perversities of the thing. But I also do battlefield studies, still work with the military today, and I'm sitting on Salisbury Plain today, which is a big army training area. I'm just on the edge of it, and you probably won't be able to hear it, but I can certainly hear the small arms and artillery going away and training at the moment behind me.
So if we see you duck and cover, we know they've gotten a little too close.
Right.
Okay. And we're really, really pleased to have another World War II veteran with us today. And I'm going to let Scott, who brought him to us, do the introduction of Ken Cooke.
Thank you for that, Glenn. So it's my honor to be able to introduce Ken Cooke this morning. We determined a little while ago that he's 99 and 11/12 years old. His birthday is in about a month or so, and he'll be turning 100. He's joining us this morning from York, originally from Nottinghamshire. He grew up during the wartime period, and of course turned 18 in 1943. Spent some time working in an armaments factory, and then, as he told me, he got that call-up letter, and of course ended up going into the army. So Ken, I'd love it if you could say good morning to us.
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
We are
I hope
doing
you're all
great,
keeping well.
and I'm glad to see you got your son Stephen there. Stephen, it's nice to see
Hello.
you again too.
Nice
So
to see you.
Ken, I wanted to ask you just for one brief story right off the top, because it is something that comes up a little bit later. I'd love it if you could maybe tell the audience just a little bit about your father to start, because your father was a veteran of the Great War, and he also played a role in the Second World War. Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, it was born in 1900, and you just said he was in the First World War. But our records, we've looked back at what he was doing in the First World War. But he was 18 when the First World War finished. But we have a photograph of him on a horse, and he was in one of the Lancer battalions, the 9th Lancer, I believe, where he rode a horse. We have a photograph of him on a horse with a lance in his hand, doing his bit of service. But we've concluded that he gave his age. It was a false age that he gave
to get in the army.
That's what we've worked out. But
He was in the St. John's Ambulance, wasn't he?
he had to be in St. John's. But the First World War bit, we definitely thought when we went into his background that he must have lied about his age, But unfortunately, my granddad had a bad accident down the mine. Therefore, he couldn't work. So they had to buy my father out of the army so he could provide for the family.
Wow.
And they bought him out of the army for £30. That's £30 in those days was a lot of money. Anyway, he came out of the army and he went down the mines, and that's where he looked after his family in those days. And then he came out of the army and he went down the mines. He was also in the St. John's Ambulance, where any accidents down the mines, he used to attend to them. And at the same time, he went to night school, and he got quite good with figures. And in 1938, he decided to come out of the mines, and he got a job as a time clerk at an ordnance factory in Nottingham. They made 4.5 anti-aircraft guns, 3.7 artillery. And at the same time, I left school at 14, and he obtained a job for me at the same factory as an office boy. Now, he was in 1939. He got a letter from the government calling him up in the army. He wanted to know why he was called up, because he was in a reserved occupation. Therefore, he couldn't go in the forces. But the government told him, with his experience in St. John's Ambulance, the forces was very short of medical people. So he was told to come to join the Royal Army Medical Corps. And then he was stationed in York.
Perfect.
When he was called up.
And that's a good place to pause on that one right now, Ken. I just wanted to introduce that little point because it's something that plays a little bit of a role later on. So Ken, we'll come back to your story in a little while, but we want to give Tim the chance to set up Gold Beach. So Glenn, I'll pass on to you.
Very good.
Yeah, actually, it's now Tim's show. Tim, you need to share your PowerPoint. There we go.
So this is Tim in
Right.
Black.
Yeah.
Okay, and maximize it when you can.
That's it. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. First slide there, just to remind everybody where Gold Beach is in relation to everything else. There is a 15-mile gap between the end of Omaha Beach and the beginning of Jig sector of Gold Beach, for 15 miles. So quite a considerable distance, with the small town of Port-en-Bassin in the middle. Much smaller gap between Gold and Jig of about 1.5 miles where there's a marsh. So the dark days of 1940, Winston Churchill, who had been Prime Minister for little over a month, during which time the British Army had been defeated and driven out of Europe, evacuated from Dunkirk, and invasion threatened. And during that time, Churchill gave instructions that preparation should be made, formed the combined operations and combined operations to study the problems associated with a return to Europe. And of course, at this time, everybody thought he was absolutely mad. You know, the danger was that we were going to be actually invaded. So really early prescient preparations. However, it wasn't until much later, early 1943, Casablanca Conference with Churchill, Roosevelt, and the other war leaders that the reality of preparing for the cross-channel attack, D-Day, became a reality. This man here, Lieutenant General Sir Frederick Morgan, he was appointed as Chief of Staff, Supreme Allied Commander, and generally known as Cossack. And his big decision was where to attack. Short distance across the Pas-de-Calais, the obvious place up here, a slightly longer distance to Normandy, or the much longer distance down to Brittany. But the obvious time over target for aircraft, a slightly shorter turnaround distance, better beaches, less harsh tides, etc., all led him to choose Basse Normandy, Lower Normandy, or the Bay de Seine, between the mouth of the Seine and the Cotillon Peninsula here. And this was his first draft of the plan. As you can see, there were just 3 beaches at this stage. This map was produced in November 1943. So we got Omaha Beach there, not known as Omaha Beach at the time, Beach 315. Then we got Gold here, which was Beach 308. No Utah, no Sword Beach at this stage. The number of troops that were being made available were strictly limited by what they thought would be available, and more to the point, what some reluctant heads of service, both British and American, were willing to make available. So just 3 divisions to start with. While this was going on, Hitler issued Führerbefehl number 51, which really sped up the construction of the Atlantic Wall, which had been going on since 1942. This is one of the showpieces that existed at the time, but there were very few defences, certainly in Normandy. So the threat of invasion, and here is his quote: "We can no longer be ignored," and the construction of the Atlantic Wall, which was really a rush job. Field Marshal Rommel was appointed as commander of the Army Group B in the north, where the invasion was expected, and also the Inspector General of the Atlantic Wall. So our preparations were shielded by what was known as Plan Bodyguard. Famous Churchill quote: "In war, the truth is so precious, she must be surrounded by a bodyguard of lies." And these, on the right here, are the bodyguards that bamboozled Hitler, so much so that when his attention turned from the Russian winter offensive and Italy down here, Monte Cassino, he just said, too much, and just looked. And you can see here a map, 15th of May, 1944, so just 3 weeks before the invasion. And these are the formations that the Germans, mainly divisions, the Germans had spotted. So down here we have, you will all be familiar with, the 1st US Army Group, Patton's fictitious army group. A lot of them were real, but up here we've got the Third British Army, fictitious, and their task was to invade this area here. And up here in Scotland, in Edinburgh, we have the Fourth Army, Fortitude North, and so on. So, and of course, the Germans had made up a lot of these divisions themselves to try and get Hitler's attention to the West. And after the war, they were questioned, and one of them said, well, having made them up, we couldn't uninvent them. So there we are. That's the German view of what there was, many times more than we actually had. So Montgomery and Eisenhower saw the plan in Marrakesh with Churchill, New Year of 1944, and neither of them liked what they saw. It was too small a scale. The planning was not good, and this was the plan. If you just look at them, the landing, second, the strike across those rivers and marshes at the base of the Cotillon Peninsula around Carentan, then the British and Canadians breaking out, and finally the Americans swinging into Brittany and Rennes, to all those ports in Brittany that they were going to use, as they had in the First World War, Brest, Lorient, etc., as their theatre entry point. But Montgomery, with the agreement of Eisenhower, recast the plan, and as you can see, inserted 2 extra beaches, Utah at the bottom of the Cotillon Peninsula, which would obviate the requirement to cross all these awkward marshes around here, and inserted Sword Beach for a dash on to capture Caen. With the big difference was that the breakout would be by the 2 US armies to the west. Now, some people question this, whether this was originally Montgomery's plan, but there are plenty of documents now dating to January and February 1944 that actually firmly show that this was Montgomery's intent all along. Didn't go all according to plan as he said he did, but it went near enough. So if you just read those, the bottom one, really, because beach obstacles were starting to appear, that changed the time for the actual assault, and therefore changed the date, moon, tide, daylight, etc. So having come back from the east, Hitler's attention was now turned to the west to face the invasion that was going to surely come. After the war, German generals put the redeployment of troops in Normandy down to Hitler's intuition. But actually, reading some recently published German documents, it is quite clear that what happened was that Hitler noted the number of troops down here in the west and the mass of troops over here in the southeast. And there were more troops in the southeast than could logically be used, and therefore it was determined by Hitler, and it was Hitler's views that counted. No one else's views really counted in the in that chancellery, and he thought there would be a secondary landing. And where would that secondary landing be? And he did, or his staff for him did an estimate that basically reflected that was done by Cossack, and determined that the most likely place for that secondary landing was Normandy. To be clear, even though he reinforced Normandy, Hitler and the rest of the German staff were always convinced and remained convinced until well into July that there would be a landing across the Pas de Calais. So Normandy to be reinforced, but not at the expense of the Pas de Calais. And here is the force laydown in January 1944, the time when the plans were being hatched. And you can notice here already Rommel had persuaded Hitler that there was the need for a backing up of Caen. So we get this extra division already there. So if we pay attention now to this area here, the Cotillon Peninsula, and then if I go forward, you can see that in April, these formations here, Off-Truppen, this was a very rocky bit of coast, 30 Mobile Brigade appeared, von der Heiter's 6th Fallschirmjäger Regiment was around the area of the marshes, and the 61st Air Landing Division, Luftlanding Division, on that really important spine of the Cotillon Peninsula, those roads that led to the vital port of Cherbourg. So if I go back again, we've got 352nd Division in St. Lo, 716th Division there, spread out over a front of about 40 miles. Go back forward again, and we see that this, as the 352nd Division, has now come forward to the coast in what was to be the American sector, and 716th Division, a coastal infantry division, their frontage was halved. Some elements of 716, of course, as many will be familiar, remained with 352. Oops, right. But the big one is 21st Panzer Division down here, and the Osttruppen there, 77 Division there, and look at this. We now have a Panzer Division astride the city of Caen. We have 2 Panzer Grenadier regiments, equivalent to British brigades, north of the city, and we have the Panzer Regiment to the south, within 2 hours motoring of the city of Caen. So and down here in this what had been a void, we end up with another Panzer Division, Panzer Lair, who 50th Division would do battle with later in the campaign. Now, the boundary between 352nd Division and 716th Division was almost slap bang coincident with the boundary of Gold Beach. And this is a chunk of German map. It's actually a minefield map. All these notations here over towards Omaha. Omaha's off the map to the left. These are all minefields. But the interesting point from our perspective is all of these numbered points are Widerstandnest or resistance points. They tended to be about company strength, company plus, company minus, with a variety of weapons, mortars, anti-tank guns, machine guns, and artillery observers. And you can see Gold Beach has one right on its edge there, 37, which we'll be talking about quite a bit, 36 in the middle in Jig sector, and then a whole group down here overlooking King sector, where Ken landed with his battalion of the Green Howards. The difference between these two divisions, 352nd, relatively newly formed, and it was being raised and trained to fight in Russia. But as I've just explained, it had been brought forward to the coast, where its training was heavily interrupted by the necessity of working on beach defences, and also concrete bunkers. So their training was heavily curtailed. 716 Division, they had been in position since the end of 1942, and so they were well trained in their their role, but a lot of their soldiers were older, or soldiers that had been wounded and were of a lower category, and indeed soldiers who had got the Order of the Frozen Feet, i.e. they had fought in Russia and had had frostbite. So a brief overview there. And this is Southampton, one of the embarkation ports, a really quite complicated map. This was for all the embarkation areas, right the way up and down the coast. And you can see a lot of the facilities that were available for the force here. This is 50th Division up the top, veterans from North Africa and Sicily, and some of them in Italy as well. 8th Armoured Brigade, some veterans there too. 79th Armoured Division, we'll talk a bit about them later. Commandos, the Beach Group, and various other specialists, including engineers down there. They all assembled in the area of the New Forest and embarked from some of the points in New Forest, but most in the docks in Southampton from the various camps here. The preparations were almost as complicated as the actual assault landing. So that's my first bit done.
Ken.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ken. Hey, if we could just, I'm sorry, Tim. If we could ask one question of Tim before we start with Ken, because it's been in the chat a lot, and I find it a very interesting question. We didn't get to ask Tim yesterday. In the States, from the U.S. point of view, General Montgomery is much maligned, I would say, given his personality and his later in the campaign, his later issues with Eisenhower and Bradley, et cetera, with U.S. generals. What is the point of view in Britain about Montgomery and his role in the battle?
Well, he is even in Britain certainly a controversial character still today. People either love him or loathe him, but the fact is that he was our first successful general in World War II. We went through that period, which is common when somebody ushers in a new method of warfare. You know, Napoleon, and in this case, the German sort of the Blitzkrieg and all that surrounds that, to learn how to overcome that and to stop basically fighting World War One. And so he was the first to do that, and so he was the natural one for that. And he had a winning way that actually suited the British. Remember, we had fought the First World War, the British Commonwealth, 1,300,000 casualties. And when we entered the Second World War, no one actually, it's not written down, it wasn't said, but it was just known and accepted that this war would not be fought in the same way. And Montgomery was a very organized general. He wouldn't say, go that way. He would put all the preparations in and then say, right, go that way. And by the way, here's everything that goes with it. So he was, his character flaws. And, you know, you mentioned his issues later in the campaign. Many of those issues later in the campaign were where he had actually been stung by a lot of what the American generals had said. You know, it was Patton, after all, who described at the press conference a public press conference as a Montgomery as that little shit. So there can be no love lost. I think Montgomery, by the time the bulge came along and his meltdown with Bradley and co, I think he was at the end of his tether with American generals sniping at him. So I think we must cut him a little bit of slack, but he was not. Don't think I would have liked him myself.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for reminding us how colorful Patton could be. Scott, you were going to start with Ken.
Absolutely. So Ken, we'll transition to you. Tim has given us, I think, a great look on how the invasion was supposed to work, what the top command was planning and all the rest of it. But you're the guy, Ken, who's actually boots on the ground, who is experiencing this thing firsthand. So Ken, I think a great thing to hear about first would be a little bit about your training. And I remember that you had a really interesting story about a bicycle pump.
Oh, yes. Yes. When I was called up, we were sent to Richmond in Yorkshire, to the barracks there, and we started our initial training. We started off by being examined by doctors, dentists, hairdressers, and they did a good job on all of us. And then we started our 6 weeks basic, what they call basic training, where we did parades in the square, marching up and down, and getting used to carrying weapons. And then we had our physical exercises as well. We used to do an hour in the gymnasium, and then we would do probably a route march of about 10 miles. Then after that, we did more exercises. We really had to get fit, and believe me, we were fit when we finished all this training. As for the weapons, we were issued with rifles, which were covered in grease, and the first job we did was to clean our rifles, get them spotless, and then we were taught how to use the rifles. And we first went on the range. We were issued with 10 rounds of ammunition. The first 5 rounds was fired at 100 yards, and the second 5 were at 200 yards. Now, the first shot we fired, when it hit the target or missed the target, because the weapons hadn't been zeroed properly, and the word came back from the target area to the sergeants or corporals, and they adjusted the sights on your rifle to make sure that you hit the spot when you fired again at the rifle. So we fired the remaining 4, then we transferred to 200 yards, and we did the same again there.
What other weapons did you have? What other weapons did you train with?
And after the rifles, we were assembled with the one of the officers or the sergeants, and in front of him on the table, he had these different weapons: a Sten gun, Tommy gun, Bren-Gun, and a 2-inch mortar. And he explained everything to us. Then we went out to an area where we fired a burst of 3 seconds on the Sten gun, the Tommy gun, and the Bren gun. And the mortar, we fired a round in a 2-inch mortar, but it was a dummy round, but it had the same reaction as a real round. It just fired, and just a bang with the mortar, and the tank destroying weapon, the Piat anti-tank weapon, which was a large barrel kind of weapon, where you loaded the round into the barrel, and you fired it, and it was a very big rebound on when you fired, and the round supposed to be fired at a tank, and it hit the tank or the target, and it sat there for a while. Then it exploded inside the tank, or in the mock-up tank what we had. And that's, as far as I can remember, that's the most weapon training we had. And we
Did you go somewhere else to do any more training?
we went to different areas in the north of England, to different barracks, to see what the people there was doing, and we had tips from those people who was more senior soldiers. They gave us quite a lot of information that we youngsters knew nothing about. We had to, study those ideas, what these people told us about. And we
How old were you then?
all sorts of things. We such as map reading and other exercises. And we did a lot of work throughout the day. And we knew very well we'd done a lot of work in the evening, because we were more or less tired out. And nearly every day we were tired out with the exercise and different things we were doing. But it certainly kept us fit.
And let me ask a quick question there, Ken. I think this would have happened just a little bit earlier, but tell the story of the bicycle pump. It's a really interesting one.
Yes. Well, one of the exercises, we were taken into a large room with different some tables, and on the tables was pieces of equipment, and like some blocks and some circular blocks, where you had to put the circular blocks into the circles or in the holes, the square blocks into the square holes. There was that type of puzzle. And also there were other pieces of equipment all stripped down to the bare bones. Now on my table there was some metal pieces. I had no idea whatsoever what it was. I tried to put it together in some kind of way, but I had no chance of doing that, because I didn't know anything about this thing. And anyway, after the exercise was over, the sergeant came in and looked on our table, and he said, do you realise what that jumble of metal is? I said, no. I said, I have no idea whatsoever. They said, it is a bicycle pump, which they're taken to pieces and put on the table and expected us people, us recruits, to figure out what these things were. But I'd never, well, I can't remember seeing a bicycle at home, because nobody could afford a bicycle in those days. And I've no idea at all what that metal pieces were on that table. Anyway, the sergeant said, well, you're not the only one that didn't know about it.
So because of that, Ken, you ended up in the infantry, correct?
I did, yes. Well, the exercises that we're doing, certain people, the sergeants and corporals, were judging these tables, and at the end of it, we were assigned to different regiments. Some people went in the tank regiment, some went in the signals, some in the service corps, where used to do a lot of transport work. But the most of us was posted to the infantry, and that's when I joined up with the Green Howards.
Very good. And let me show a quick photo, Ken, and we'll transition back to Tim in just a moment. I'll just do a share screen here. So this is your picture at the time.
Yes.
You and your regiment, and you can see the little X right there over you. And just to show a nice close-up photo. So Ken, this is you at 18 years old. I take it you just would have been in progress with your training and everything. Ken, do you think the training got you ready for what you're about to go into?
I believe so, but same as I said before, Scott, our training, we didn't do any training whatsoever regarding D-Day. Quite a lot of people went up to Scotland and they practiced landing on beaches in Scotland that were similar to the Normandy beaches. But we never did anything like that. I mean, there's films of troops crawling on the barbed wire and live fire being fired above them. We had nothing like that at all. I mean, there was people that were trained, had been told about D-Day, but we'd never been told about D-Day. The first thing we knew about D-Day was when we went down south to a camp just outside Southampton. And we were informed there, or we made our minds that they told us different things. Then we realized we were going to go across the channel.
Perfect. And let's pause there for a moment, Ken, and we'll let Tim pick up his part of the story, and Ken will come back to you in a couple of moments.
Okay.
Hold on.
Is Tim Tim, I don't think, is unmuted.
Well, ask you to unmute him. There you go.
Yeah, there I am. Sorry. One thing I can pick up with on Ken is that 50th Division came back fairly late on in the process, and at Montgomery's insistence, they were given the assault role because the brigades, two of the brigades had already carried out 2 assault landings. And so, you know, they were it. And time was short, and therefore they had an abbreviated training package. And because 7 Green Howards was not an assault battalion. They were coming in afterwards, an hour and a half or so after the initial landing. They didn't get the full training package. So that's why Ken didn't get that. The rest of the 5th East Yorks and the 6th Green Howards and the Devons and the Dorsets, they got the full, and the Hampshires got the full training package, albeit somewhat shortened. A couple of points that I spotted from the questions. Dieppe, well, we'll come to that very shortly. But intelligence was one thing to keep time we had to cut out. The Allies knew very, very well what was going on, and it was all thanks to Ultra, Bletchley Park, and the code breakers. Now, in the questions, there were a couple of mentions of Enigma. There was actually a new machine around. It was an attachment to a teleprinter, and it was many, many times more complicated than the Enigma. The Lorenz attachment had 12 rotors. The Enigma machine had 3, and they worked separately in 3 banks. This was cracked by Brigadier John Tiltman and a post office engineer called Bill Tutt, without actually ever having physically seen the machine. This was probably the greatest intellectual feat. Everybody says Enigma, cracking that was great. This was much greater. And the significance of the Lorenz attachment was that with a teleprinter with a full German equivalent of a QWERTY keyboard, you could get messages of 20,000 words being sent. And I have photographs of the Enigma messages being sent, including the appreciation or estimate by von Rundstedt himself, CNC West. So the Allies knew exactly what was going on, but it wasn't so much a question of time, but a question of resources to respond to this. The upscaling of D-Day that had taken place in January had used every single resource that was available, and the delay was to get those resources in place. And by the time these plans were becoming obvious in April and into May, it was too late to do anything. You either cancelled the invasion, put it off for a year, and the German defences would even get more serious, or go ahead with what you've got, which really explains why the Allies, against objectives that were set in January, they actually struggled to achieve them 6 months later in June. So I hope that answers 1 or 2 questions there. Here we have the invasion area Zulu, known as Piccadilly Circus. Ships converged from most of the points through the minefields, the British minefield, the German minefields, and down towards the beaches. Overnight, the Allied air forces, in particular the night bombers of the RAF Bomber Command, struck. This is a photograph taken of the Long Soumer battery some days before the invasion in May. As you can see, it's still very much a building site, but this is a photograph taken by a photo reconnaissance aircraft, PRU aircraft, about midday on D-Day itself, after it had been pounded by bombs and shelled by HMS Ajax and the Free French ship Georges Legueux, and as you can see, it was fairly well plastered. Having said that, the Germans actually managed to get the guns into action on occasions, fired a handful of rounds before being put out of action again. Naval bombardment at nautical twilight for both the British and the US sector. And then 0630, we've got the medium bombers. I think everybody knows that this, thanks to circumstances, wasn't a great success. In the British sector, the aircraft, British and American aircraft, medium bombers, were told to add 3 seconds to their bomb run, which put the bombs not here, but about half a mile inland, which by and large missed virtually everything that there was. And of course, because of the relatively poor weather, they were told that they were not to bomb unless they could positively identify their targets. And a surprisingly high proportion of aircraft returned back to the UK to their air bases with their bomb load still aboard. The British time for H-hour was started at 0725, and of course that was different from the US, which started around 6:30. That difference was due to the state of the tide, the profile of the beach, and where the beach obstacles were. On Omaha, for instance, it's a very long, shallow beach, so the H-hour had to be quite early. So British, we had a good 50 minutes more of bombardment. So we have those times. The run-in shoot was done by the Navy as they approached the beach. Everything that could fire would fire. And one of the developments from Dieppe was improvement of bombardment, and also the Canadians developed what was known as the run-in shoot by the guns of the Royal Artillery and the Royal Canadian Artillery that were due to be landed on the beach. So they fired from landing craft. It actually, in the British sector, Second Army sector, it was very successful. A similar technique used by the Americans was less so, mainly because the guns were mounted in ducks, DUKWs, which were far less stable platforms in the weather conditions prevailing at the time. So here we have Gold Beach. This is a naval plan divided into 2 sectors, King and Jig sector, which were subdivided into green and red. Green and red, of course, port and starboard. The 7 green Howards, they landed on King, behind 6 green Howards in this area, 5 East Yorks here, and over here the Hampshires were due to land, and the Dorsets here, with the Devons coming in behind. No landing planned here, as you can see, a very great mark. No great high ground, the bluffs as they had behind Omaha, but there is rising ground here to Montfleury and Versailles, and over here on this side the ground to Rose. So, but not in the extent of the bluffs behind Omaha Beach in any way. There are the beach obstacles. Mentioned those several times. They started appearing in February 1944, which of course meant a considerable amount of replanning. So rather than landing up here as planned, they now had to land down here below the obstacles. Well, that was the plan. But the tidal harmonics, which were the only data they had to work with, were from Le Havre and Cherbourg, and there was a certain amount of extrapolation, which actually, in the event, was not too accurate. So they actually landed around the time. Recycled hedgehogs from the Czech border fortification, and these ramps designed to cause the landing craft to broach, and you can just about see on the top of these, most of them had mines, and you can see one more clearly down there at the bottom. So these were them, and here is the map of Gold Beach. Once again, we've got the 4 sectors, and you can see the various obstacles marked. Plenty of mines, these horseshoe-shaped things indicating minefields, and the crosses here, belts of barbed wire. So this is the sector there. Now, Dieppe. One of the lessons of Dieppe was for. Sorry, I've got myself confused here. There we go. There we are. Was for a specialist armor, hurling flesh and blood against steel and concrete. 2nd Canadian Division really suffered very badly indeed. That was the big lesson. Do not do that. And so we have 79th Armored Division, a very highly specialized division under command of this man here, Major General Percy Hobart. He was a World War I soldier. He had been enamored by the tank, and he was a bit of an armored zealot, and he had been discharged from the army in 1942. He was a relative of Churchill by marriage, and after Dieppe, he got talking to Churchill, and having been a Major General, he went down to being a corporal in the British Home Guard. He was reappointed as a Major General. And then here we have the bobbin, one of a whole zoo of funnies, as we call them, of equipment to get across the beach. So where are we? Yeah, share. Yeah, back sharing.
Hey, Tim, if you could expand the picture, I think it might help.
I can't really.
Okay.
Hang on, let's try that one.
If not, don't worry about it.
Yeah, hang on, I'm gonna just move. Oh, sorry, something's gone awry there.
You're good.
Anyway, this thing's called the bobbin because recce by beach commandos, looking at the soil and the composition of the beach. The beach was had outcrops of clay on it, which would bog vehicles down. So this thing would lay this carpet of Hessian strengthened by steel and wood. The only one of these funnies that the Americans took was the duplex drive Sherman. Here it is on a training exercise in the Solent, and that is what it looks like with its screen down. And here it is as a diagram. These black things are compressed air tubes, and these are lightweight aluminium stanchions. It has a propeller at the back. That's the duplex drive. It could either drive the tracks or the propeller, and this is the breather and exhaust tube for the engine. So these were to land first thing before everybody else, H-5, and it would close that gap between the ending of the naval bombardment and the assault. The idea was the tanks would swim ashore from about 5,000 to 6,000 yards out, a good few miles that is, and would arrive on the beach first. The screens would drop, the tank would be down at water level here, and so i.e. hull down, and would take on the beach defences. On Gold Beach, on Omaha, as you all know, many of them sank because of the waves down there and the way they were used. The British, of course, had been training with these for a considerable amount of time and knew how to use them. In many cases, they were taken to within 2,000 yards of the beach before they swam in. And on Gold Beach, I spoke to one driver from the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry, who told me that they came off their landing pit, they settled into the water, turned the propeller on, and absolutely nothing happened. They weren't going anywhere, because what had happened, they'd actually come down and landed on the seabed. So duplex drive engaged, tracks on, and he motored up the beach. So they were more successful on the British beach than in terms of swimming than on the Americans. But what happened on D-Day is that those funnies, based on this tank here, most of them, the Churchill tank, this was an obsolescent version, the Mark III. The gun, the 2-pounder gun, was taken out. It was replaced by this demolition gun, which fired a 40-pound, what was known as a demolition round, at its target. And on here, you can see these attachments and these hawsers. They could fit between 7 and 9 separate bits of engineering equipment, from a fascine for dropping in anti-tank ditches to this ramp system here, which enabled tanks to climb sea walls. One of the big problems at Dieppe was getting the tanks off the beach, and here is the technical solution. Another bit of kit in the center there, the Sherman flail. This was very popular. This was the most successful Allied mine-sweeping bit of kit, and the Americans, until they developed their own system, would ask to try and borrow these as frequently as possible. So Jig Beach, this is objective dart down here, Le Hamel, and this is where it all went wrong on Jig Beach, because nestling in the corner down here is a pillbox, and that pillbox is here, the centerpiece of objective dart. It had a 77mm Polish anti-tank gun, captured in 1939, and as you can see, it can enfilade the beach. And these items, these vehicles here, 3 vehicles knocked out, complete. When you see around them, they've got all the marks of burning on the sand. Other vehicles here and there. Once again, this was a photograph taken about 1300 hours. That bunker was in action almost throughout the morning, and enfiladed the beach of these breaching teams. 5 to 6 vehicles of these funnies, 2 Averies, 2 flails, and normally a bridge, and at least sexy, if you like, a bit of kit, the D7 armored bulldozer, probably the most useful bit of kit going for a beach assault. So objective dart, and that's the bunker there today. The Essex Yeomanry here, 147 Regiment Artillery, they very obviously claim to have knocked it out, but actually everybody from the Dutch Navy, the Dutch gunboat Flores, the Devons, the Hampshires, and other bits of the Royal Navy all claim to have knocked the gun out. So who knows? And then it took me years of visiting D-Day and the beach with our own veterans before I was actually told that we didn't land first. It was the tanks, the assault engineers, and then the infantry. But on Gold Beach, because of the delay in the slowness of the tanks getting inshore, and then the engineers actually catching up with them, and the infantry coming alongside, they all more or less landed within a few minutes of each other. That varied across the piece during the actual landing. And sadly, this is one of the few surviving pictures from Gold Beach, actually taken on there. There was no kappa on Gold Beach. The most of the PR Armed Forces photo and film unit, AFPU photographers, were actually killed on the beach. And this is a DD tank, the 51 of the Westminster Dragoons, and this is a Bren-Gun-Carrier with the wading screens up, and these are various infantrymen sheltering in the sheltering it from that enfilading gun down at Le Hamel WN 37 objective Dart. This picture, Gold Beach, but taken much later during the course of the day. Infantry came ashore and kept coming ashore throughout the landing. So just my final bit. Ken landed up here, and this is 231 Brigade, but they didn't land in the correct places. This is where they landed. The Hampshires, rather than landing here where they would have been absolutely taken apart by the machine guns in this area here, they landed in front here, which had been very heavily and accurately bombarded, so they got ashore. Their commanding officer and their second in command were both killed and mortally wounded respectively, and only one company landed in this area here, and they were pinned down in sand dunes for most of the day. The Dorsets, having been pushed about 800 yards west, are just around this point. They were able to make their way along this route here and join in the advance down towards the southwest. So, and one thing to make the point is that with this gun dominating Jig Beach for most of the morning, Brigadier Stanier, rather than doing what happened on Omaha Beach, because he could move his troops to somewhere more sheltered, he diverted the subsequent waves around here, and using this coastal road, it's only a track, very narrow track, they were able to get back on course. So it was the ground, the shape of this point here that made all the difference. 1700 meter range of that anti-tank gun up to about here, and then they were able to get ashore relatively easily here and do a regain. So that's my bit for time.
Oh, fantastic, Tim. That was an amazing look at things. So, Ken, I think it's time to transition to you to get sort of a sense of what it would have been like for you. So, Ken, I do remember you talking about the fact that when you crossed the channel, you saw the black and white striped planes flying overhead, and you guys had a sense, of course, of where you were going by that time. In the interest of time, Ken, I thought it might be good for you to pick up at breakfast on June the 6th. What do you remember when you were woken up that morning?
Not on the ship when you had breakfast, waking up with all the...
Oh, and the morning of June the 6th, we were woken up by the reveille came over the tannoy. We were more or less half dressed in any case, so we got dressed properly. We were told to go up to the mess on the second deck, I believe it was. And we went in for our breakfast, which consisted of a corned beef sandwich, a bowl of Scotch porridge. Usually you have sugar with porridge in this country, but on that ship we had salt. With it being a Scottish meal, they had salt. It was not very nice at all. But anyway, we coped with it because we never knew when we were going to get our next meal. And we had a mug of tea, a corned beef sandwich, and a small tot of rum, which was to give us a bit of encouragement. We then were told to go down to collect our equipment, get dressed, and get all our equipment together and proceed to the top deck of the ship. And we assembled on the top deck, and from where we were, we could see the explosions on the beach, rockets, battleships firing, artillery, same as Tim mentioned on some of the landing craft. They had their own artillery. The battleships were firing, and as we watched, the salvo on the battleships, the whole ship seemed to go backwards with the recoil, and it was fascinating to watch that piece of the battleships. We could just imagine the recoil on a rifle. It just bump your shoulder, gives you a bit of a knock on your shoulder. And then we looked at the battleships, and the recoil on that, they moved the whole ship. So we had an idea what the recoil of the battleship was like.
You have to get into your landing craft.
And we were told to get to the rail on the ship where the scrambling nets were in place. And the officer looked at his watch and says, "Right, everybody down the scrambling nets into the landing craft." And we put our legs over the side of the ship and put our feet in the scrambling net rungs. You had to be very careful where you were putting your feet as you went down the scrambling net. And some of the lads missed the footing, and they put the leg through the gap instead of putting it on the rung, and they overbalanced. But we managed to catch them and put them back up on the level again. And our landing craft, we all got down safely, but you had to be very careful getting off the scrambling net into the landing craft. The large ship you was on at the time was going slowly up and down, with the waves, but the landing craft, being a smaller craft, was bobbing up and down a bit quicker. And you had to time stepping off the scramble net into the assault craft. But in our case, everybody got down safely. But we heard stories later of people who, unfortunately, overbalanced going down the scrambling net and went into the water with all their equipment. Of course, they stood no chance at all. And one or two cases of people who fell off the scrambling net and they got wedged in between the two ships and got crushed. That was very unfortunate as well. But in our case, we didn't have any accidents on our craft. And we set off to the beach, and we were just the fireworks were still going on, the battleships still firing, and as we got closer to the beach, you could hardly see the beach for smoke and dust and explosions, flashes, and then as we got closer, the people say, "What was it like on the landing craft?" Well, I try to explain that myself, I was both elbows on the side of the landing craft, watching all the fireworks going. I can't explain that. Other people were sat down or turned away from the scene on the beach. But myself, I don't know why, but I was just watching everything that was going on the beaches. The rockets, explosions, everything. I just can't explain that. I wasn't frightened. I was just more or less like an excited schoolboy with all these rockets and everything going about.
What happened when you landed?
And as we approached the beach, the chap that was driving, the Navy chap that was driving our craft, he got us within, I should say, 3 feet of dry land. So I stepped off into 6 inches of water, and my explanation when people ask me what it was like landing on the beach, I say, well, just imagine you're walking down the street in your town, it's been raining very hard, you came across a puddle of water on the pavement and you put your foot in accidentally. What was your feelings? My feelings were, oh, look at my socks, all wet through. I wasn't bothered about the explosions, bullets flashing by or anything. All I was worried about was my socks. Now, later on, I explained this a couple of years ago to a chap. I said, I was upset of getting my feet and my socks wet. And then I've seen films of the landings where quite a lot of the troops were wading through the water with a rifle above the head and the water up to their chest. Now, if I was angry about my socks getting wet, what did they feel like? They were wet through from the neck downwards. I just can't explain it.
Did you have to get off the beach quickly?
And then the officers and the sergeants, they were shouting, "Get off the beach as quick as possible. Never mind what happens to your pal or the chap next to you. If he falls down, don't bother about it. You get off the beach as quickly as possible. The medical people will take care of the people that fell down. And we got off the beach as quickly as possible to allow the follow-up stuff that was coming ashore, such as the rations and the extra soldiers and artillery. They were all coming behind us. So we got off the beach as quickly as possible into the countryside.
Well done.
Oh, that was an amazing story to listen to, Ken. Just as amazing as the first time I heard you tell it. So we are going to come back to you, Ken, for a final piece in a couple of moments. But I know that Tim had a few things he wanted to add at this point. So Tim, please go ahead.
Yep. Hi. I'm
Have a drink now.
still on. Right. Go back one. I've been looking at some of the chats, and the usual point has been brought up about the experience of the US Marines. Well, I've just made myself a little list here of the operations that happened in the Western theatre of operations. Torch landings across North Africa in November 1942. Operation Husky, Sicily, 1943, bigger than anything ever attempted in the Pacific. And then there's the 8th Army's crossing of the Straits of Messina, Operation Avalanche, the landing of 5th US Army at Salerno, and Operation Shingle at Anzio. So the Western assault force had got their own very considerable body of experience. So, and of course, attacking a coastline, a heavily defended coastline with concrete, is very difficult, very different from attacking a series of islands. I'm not belittling it at all, but the experience was very different, and they had their own. And final point is the LVT landing vehicle track, called an Alligator in British service, was only made available in the Western Theatre in 1945 for the crossing of the Rhine and the River Po in Italy. So I hope that answers those. Our country's highest awards were only very sparingly made on D-Day, and here we have a member of 6th Green Howards, who Sergeant Major in that battalion, Sergeant Major Hollis. He landed here, as you can see on the map. There is a little square of a pillbox and probably an anti-tank gun as well. As they came in, they saw this pillbox, and in the best traditions of the British Army, the youngest and smallest soldier was firing the heaviest weapon, the machine gun, not very accurately, and he was firing it all over the place. Sergeant Major Hollis grabbed the gun, and of course it had been firing, so its barrel was hot, so he burnt his hand. Fair amount of swearing, engaged the pillbox, and they stormed the shore. It turned out that that pillbox was actually a railway shelter, because along this road here was a light railway. Later on in the day, he really did earn his Victoria Cross further inland, when his platoon, he was started off as a company sergeant major, but with casualties to officers and NCOs, he ended up actually commanding a platoon, and they got pinned down, and through his act of bravery, nay, heroism, he managed to, at the cost to himself and considerable danger, managed to extricate his soldiers. So what happened after Gold Beach? We got our 2 assault brigades, Jig and King, 231 Brigade, 69 Brigade. They were to establish their first position about 2 miles inland. And at this point, 231 Brigade received one of the only really serious counterattacks that actually pretty much came to grips with the leading assault elements. Elsewhere, the Germans did try counterattacks that their tactical doctrine required them to do, but this one was actually right early on, and it wasn't broken up by artillery, as it was the case in virtually all others. Landing immediately behind 231 Brigade was 4-8 Commando Royal Marines. Their task was to get to Port-en-Bessin and capture it intact. Because that was where the Allied fuel was going to land. Millions upon millions of gallons of fuel were going to be required. But remember, these tanks of the day did gallons per mile, not miles per gallon. They had a very bad landing, and most of them came ashore, minus a lot of their weapons and equipment. Fortunately or unfortunately, there were plenty of weapons, web equipment, ammunition to scavenge from the dead and the wounded. The 2 brigades were to press on their 3rd Battalion, which on the case of King Beach was 7 Green Howards. Their task was to press on, as you've heard, inland, and then landing behind them, 2 further brigades were to push on to this line here. Poor old 69 Brigade, they had to keep going up to the 3rd, the 3rd and the 4th final objectives. But with things running way behind time, as predicted by Admiral Ramsey, that the landing, thanks to the sea state, would be slow. Matters were running about 2 to 3 hours behind by the evening, and that delayed 69 the arrival of 151 and 56th Brigade. Matters were not helped now by the return of some Sturmgeschütz. The Germans had originally sent their corps reserve, which was based at Bayeux, west along this road to confront the US airborne, but by the afternoon, at least some of them had returned and were lining this wood here, and pretty much brought the advance in this area south of Crully to a halt, and 69 Brigade, basically, or these 3 brigades here, reached the line of the phase 3 objectives. There were only, in event, patrols sent forward across the N13 here, and patrols from the Essex Regiment sent in to Bayeux. Bayeux and the whole of the 4th objective was captured early the following morning. And of course, the link up with the US forces from Omaha Beach 5th Corps didn't actually happen until the evening of D+2, and that was with the Devons at the Chateau Fosse-Soucy on the River Drom. So there we are. I think that's my bit. That is what was actually achieved on D-Day against the objective, which was there. This significant underachievement all round can be really attributed to that reinforcement that Hitler made in April and early May. Some of those elements of 21st Panzer Division, for instance, had only been around Caen for 2 weeks. So there's not much we could have done about it. And of course, remember, ultra information could only be passed to 4-star generals. Everybody else below just got hints that something had changed. And gradually, rather than capturing Caen, for instance, on the first day, it changed over time in orders to captured shortly thereafter. So there we are.
Well, thank you for that. And I'll come back to you in a moment there, Tim. Ken, I wanted to ask you to tell one last story. So, Stephen, I think we might need you to unmute Ken there. But Ken is, of course, involved in the Battle of Normandy for approximately the next month. Ken, can you tell people what happened to you on July the 4th?
Were you wounded?
Well, on July the 4th, we were on patrol, and we were near a town called Tilly. And from where we were, we could see that the town had been practically obliterated. It was just a place full of ruins. And as we were walking along, the sergeant said, "Halt," to all of us. They stopped. "Right, we've been walking now for about an hour and a half." He said, "We'll just have a little rest." So we, some people sat on the ground, some just leant against the wall where we were, and myself, I just knelt down on the floor, and we were chatting to one another. Then all of a sudden we heard an explosion, and I heard one or two shouts and screams. Then I found myself laying face down on the ground, and two of our group picked me up from the ground, and they carried me to the first aid station. And I passed out. And when I woke up again, I was looking at a circle of lights, which I later presumed it was the operating theatre. When I passed out again, then I woke up in a field hospital in Bayeux, where the doctors told me I'd been wounded with shrapnel from we at first thought it was a shell that had come over and exploded in a tree, and the shrapnel splattered down on us. Well, then we thought it was from my wounds. I had a wound in my foot, which couldn't have come from an explosion in a tree. We thought it was an 88 shell with a self-propelled gun. Was what I call an airburst. With the shell, it bursts in the air, not on the ground, and the shrapnel came down.
But it was actually a multi-bomb.
Then, with a bit of research later on, we found out it was a mortar attack, what we'd been through. And anyway, I finished up in the hospital, field hospital in Bayeux, where I woke up face down with some transfusion tubes in my arms, and this nurse was sticking needles in my backside.
It hit your shoulder and back.
And then I later found out that I'd been wounded in my back, in my shoulder and my back, and the back of my legs with different pieces of shrapnel. And then the nurse said, we're going to put you on a stretcher. And then I passed out again. Then I woke, next time I woke up, I was on the beach on a stretcher and put on a ship and brought back to England. I don't remember the journey across the Channel. So I must have been passed out again. And I woke up in the hospital in England.
South of England.
South of England, and then about 3 or 4 days later, put me on a train and took me up to a hospital in Scotland. And I was in that hospital for 5 months, and I was the second day I was up there, the doctor made his rounds, and he came to me and said, right, I'm going to take you back into the theatre. So I was in the theatre, put a needle in my arm, and I passed out again. And then when I woke up, I was in a plaster cast from my neck down to my waist. And also my arm was in a plaster. It was propped up to keep it in position. And I was in that plaster cast for about a week. And the doctor says, right, we're going to take the plaster cast off. And I thought, oh, that's very good. I was very relieved because this plaster, underneath the plaster, the skin was itching like mad. And I told the nurse, and she said, hang on a minute. And she fetched me a knitting needle for me to poke down the inside of the plaster to get rid of the itch. So I was very relieved when they took the plaster off.
That's all right for now.
Yeah, that was great. Your memory is just incredible, Ken, and it's just remarkable to imagine that this was all happening 81 years ago, and we're so happy that you're able to join us today to recount some of that story. I did put for everybody in the audience the link to Ken's bio, the story my students and I did, and he's got a lot more to say. So if you are interested, you can certainly follow up there. But Ken and Stephen, I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you guys. It was really great to see both of you, and I'll make sure to hold up a pint for you, Ken, when it's your birthday next.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. Nice to be involved. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Now, Tim, you did have one more slide, and I wanted you to be able to show that to everybody because you have got some upcoming books.
Oh yes, but first of all, couple of points. I saw Carol, I think it was, who said that her father landed from Omaha with the 1st Division. My father was just too young, and he spent late 1943 and 1944 in the family pub at Weymouth, where it was being run by my mother, as my grandfather was away with the Royal Navy. And he recalls, and I've been back to that pub quite a few times with him, he recalls fondly many of the American soldiers of the 1st US Division using the pub in Weymouth. And he also remembered that his sister, who was a bit older than him, was about the only girl in Weymouth who had silk stockings or nylons. And the other point I just remembered really about the Pacific Theatre and the Western Theatre is that there was no love lost between the two. And just one example, somewhere in the spring of 1944, Eisenhower said, the best thing that could help the Allied cause was if somebody will shoot Admiral King. So there wasn't a lot of love or cooperation between the two theatres at any level. So, oh, and that final slide, sorry. And if I get it to go, come on, oh, there it is. Sorry, I don't, being ex-army, I'm not too keen on self-promotion, but anyway, I've been moving gradually east along the coast and inland from the Bocage to Hill 112, and I've settled around the city of Caen. The book on the left is out already. It basically is why Caen was not captured on D-Day. I think I've largely answered that today. And the second book is on how it was eventually captured by the British and the Canadians, basically a month late.
Well, thank you for that, Tim. I know that I am going to pick up a copy of it, and hopefully a few others will as well. I should turn it over to Sean Hall, our official Veterans Breakfast Club representative. So, Sean, go ahead.
What a great program, guys. Thank you all for joining us and for boy, this wonderful educational and historic program. I just wanted to share real quick here at the end to thank our sponsor, UPMC for Life, for sponsoring the VBC for so long. You check out all of the plan options that they have available that were made by veterans, and they can see how it could save you money by visiting upmchealthplan.com/Medicare. We have a free quarterly magazine that goes out to about 12,000 households here, and we print up about 5,000 or more here in the Pittsburgh area just to hand out. But the summer issue has gone to the printer, so hopefully we will all be receiving this soon. If you don't receive it, it's because we don't have your address. So please send that to us, and we will make sure to get you on the mailing list so you can get these quarterly, again, for free. Monday night, we will have a Veterans Open Conversation, 7 p.m. That is Eastern time here, but great open conversation. Todd and I just kind of intro the program and then open it up to the vets in the room. So whatever topics or things that you would like to bring to the table, please join us for the open conversation. And then we have another special program Wednesday night. So normally we're on Monday nights and Thursday nights. We have another special program happening on Wednesday night, the Guadalcanal with the Ocean Exploration Trust and the Nautilus. So please join us Wednesday night. That's a GGL, Greatest Generation Live program. And then we also are going to be on Thursday night for Army Rangers in World War II. And then don't miss it later on this month. We're bringing back the VBC Jeopardy. So that'll be later month in July. We always have a great time with that, and are starting to advertise it because we always have a lot of participation and a lot of fun. But again, great program today, Scott. Thank you. And thanks to Glenn. Thank you, Tim and Ken, everybody for contributing here to the chat. And I hope you all have a great and happy 4th. And we'll see you all on Monday night. Scott, final words?
I suppose I should wish happy Canada Day to the Canadians in the room. July 1st was our big celebration. Went to see the fireworks yesterday. But you guys know I'm a dual citizen, so happy July 4th as well.
Happy Canada Day. Thank you all. We'll see you all on Monday night.